Daniel is typically in these obscure places all over the world, but he is no longer. So Daniel, you are up.
Thanks, Scott. Sorry to bore you guys with my physical location, but Merril, a lot of respect for you. It's great to have the honor to hear from you and learn some of the lessons, specifically around mental toughness and preparedness. I kind of have an interesting question. It's more timely and it's maybe a little more sensitive, but it has to do with this idea of cancel culture and with John Gruden making the news lately, and things that are happening just in the world. I'm curious if you could just in general talk about, what lessons we might be able to learn from that. I'm just curious to learn from like a football perspective, because obviously he's carried a lot of respect over the years, and I'm just kind of curious as a hot topic at the moment, and maybe it's not appropriate, but I did want to bring it up and get your opinion.
Well, something, I always refer to Chuck Noll in moments like this. And really how I was raised. I was born and raised in Pocatello, Idaho. Okay. I'm right next to an Indian reservation. Some of my best friends were Howard Whitefeather, okay, Rayburn Buckskin. We only had 2 black kids in our high school. Both of them ended up being some of my dearest friends. Marcus Montgomery played basketball, and Damon Coles on the football team. I grew up, and it's important you know how people grew up, and where they come from, because when I get drafted by Pittsburgh, and I'll get back to that in a second, a guy named Greg Lloyd was drafted in the same draft as me, who's from the South, who came from a completely different environment that I came from. I never really experienced racism. I didn't know anything. Let me back up. I was taught to be respectful. All right. I was supposed to, you obey, you be respectful, you be kind. That doesn't mean you get trampled over either. There's a time that one has to stand up for themselves. Being respectful doesn't mean you get run over. I think sometimes that gets lost. So my environment that I grew up in, the first time I actually experienced any type of like racism was I watched the movie Roots. I don't know if you remember the movie Roots. Yeah. It was that was a big deal when I was a kid, and so when I got drafted to the Steelers, that was the first time I had really cross-pollinated with a lot of different cultures and a lot of different environments. And Greg Lloyd had come from an area where racism was big. He lived it and lived in it. And we lockered by each other. And one of the first times we were sitting next together, I just thought I should say hi. I'm like, we hadn't even said anything. It's uncomfortable. We just got drafted. And I said, how you doing, man? And he goes, screw you, white guy. I was like, I was like sucker punched. Like I didn't know. Now I could spend an hour of how this journey went, because we went back and forth, because at some point I was like, I ain't having that. I didn't do nothing to the guy. And for 10 years, we battled against each other head to head. I remember when I would go to Chicago, first guy to call me was Greg Lloyd. In fact, I just got done in an event with Donnie Shell, who was also next to me, Donnie Shell's event, and we were there. And Greg Lloyd and I are dear friends now. And he learned where I came from. I learned where he came from. And so I guess to answer your question, all the stuff that goes on, listen, I know this, and I always use this. In fact, 10 years ago, maybe longer, I put up a goal. Part of one of my goals was don't judge people. Don't judge them. I don't know why it is human nature to make judgments. And maybe that's completely wrong. Maybe I used to do it. I don't know. But it was really a goal, because I was like, here's what I do know. Nobody can go walk on water. There's not a person sitting in this movie can walk out and go on water. Now, your degree of sin or mistakes may be less or bigger than the next. That still don't make you right. That still doesn't give you authority to judge and cast judgment. And so being in that environment, I got to learn where somebody else came from. And people came from a lot different world than I came from. When they learned where I came from, it ended up being just a great blend. But sometimes I don't think we open the scope long enough to do that. whether you've lived in prejudice situations or racial situations, and it's hard to climb out of that environment. I was never in that environment. You know, I talk to love people, respect people, you know, and be respectful of yourself too. And I've been grateful that I've always followed those lines. I've always done that. It's always worked out for me. Has there been tense moments? Has there been moments like that? And they were uncomfortable for a long time. You know, with Greg and I, we went at it for a long time. I can share story upon story with him and I just going, I mean, saying things that if you heard him said today, back and forth, you know, because at some point I was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to take it anymore, you know, and I would fire back at him. And eventually it became just a great relationship once, you know, I think he took a moment to look at a bigger scope. I had already been on that bigger scope. I'm not saying I was the better guy. We just couldn't get along. I couldn't sit there and say, Greg, I didn't come from your world. I don't see the things. I'm not the people you may have seen down south. Okay. You know, you're my teammate, you know, and which I like about sports too. When we line up, we're black and gold, you know, you're my teammate. And that's what I do love about sports is, you know, if we'd all treat each other like we're teammates, you know, and we're trying to do all this together, and everybody, like, I'm a product of a lot of people. At the end of the day, I'm a product of so many people. Like this would be a boring conversation if this was just about me and what I knew. I mean, I remember I haven't said anything that I really know yet. I'm taking everything I've learned from other people. And I think we've all experienced this. You know what love feels like. You know what hate feels like. You know, and you know, fighting versus getting along and understanding doesn't mean you have to agree with anybody, but don't be disagreeable, you know, and listening to somebody else. As long as I think people open their mind and they don't be so standoffish that they're not going to just listen to you and be somewhat reasonable. Doesn't mean you got to go along with it, but not to be so angry that you want to start a war over it. I mean, I don't know if I can't remember. I mean, just today I saw I don't trust what goes on in the news very much, but like the Alabama loss cost, some people are arguing, somebody gets shot over it. And I was thinking, who takes it to that degree, you know? So, but I'm grateful for a lot of people and experiences. So I understand looking at other people's, you know, where they've been, try to find out where they've been. Once I understand that, I'm like, wow, yeah, I might have that view too, you know, and hopefully I could change that scope and see that not everybody's like that, you know, and get them to maybe grow a little bit too. And Greg Lloyd and I relationship, I always use him and love that guy. He's, you know, I can call him upright. And then you find, you know, another thing, I think you can always find a common ground. Yeah, you find something, right? It's music. Like he and I, you know, we found a common ground, hunting. Like we both like to hunt. You know, it's funny, like all the swords got put down, everything that it was incredible. You know, now when I see him, it's a great, I love it. You know, I mean, wish more people could be like, I mean, we could all get to that point a little better. We would have less of this like this filter of just, and, you know, hate and anger that's never harbored into anything good. Never, anywhere, anytime.